Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm a CBT therapist and forensic psychologist, and today I wanted to go through 5 ways to help you to better manage your anger. So, anger is a natural emotion, but for some reason it gets a bit of a bad reputation. So, it's about for us understanding how we can manage our anger, because for some people, even though it's a natural emotion, it can lead us into some difficult situations. So firstly, one of the key things is understanding your triggers. So understanding what makes you angry, whether that is people, situations, events. And although we can't avoid our triggers, we can understand how to potentially better manage within those. So first of all, it may be helpful just to reflect a little bit and just thinking about, okay, so what normally makes me angry? Is it being stuck in traffic? Is it having to go around and meet the in-laws? Is it conversations at work? And by knowing what actually triggers us, we're able to better prepare ourselves so when we go in those situations. So once you've got an understanding of what your triggers are, then it's about thinking, okay, so what is it about those situations that make me angry? And from then on, we can then think about the things that we can do in those particularly triggering situations that can help us. So your breath is a super powerful tool to help you to manage anger. And when we breathe fast, we're often angry. But when we breathe slowly and softly, we're normally quite calm and relaxed. And the trick here is once you know your triggering situations and when you're maybe within those situations, notice what your breath is doing. Is your breath speeding up quite a lot? Are you noticing that you're feeling really tense and your breath is coming from your chest, it's not coming from your belly, and you're breathing quite fast or quite strongly? And within that, it's about being able to calm that down. So an easy way to do that is to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you do this, you can try something called box breathing, which is when you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and in for 4 again. So following that box breath. Another one is just to breathe in for the count of 3 and out for the count of 5. And when you're doing so, with both of those exercises, you're slowing down your breath. And by doing so, that is then sending messages to your brain that you're calmer. Even if you've still got that residual anger there, your breath is going to be super, super key to actually helping to calm you down. So that is something that you can use whenever, because you can change your breath and no one's really going to know what you're doing. So that is something that can help you in those moments. And in those triggering situations maybe where you can't always leave, you can use a timeout. So whether that is a physical timeout, so you take yourself away from a situation to have that space so you can maybe do your breathing, or it could be that if you are in a relationship or if you've got a close friendship or family relationship and they're aware of something that is making you angry, say to them that I'm going to just take a time away from this situation. This may be helpful to have a conversation with your friends, family beforehand, so then they know what you're doing, so they can respect that space that you're requesting from them. And so just taking that time away, that moment, and even if you're at work, you can leave a meeting to briefly go to the toilet, so you can sneakily take these breaks whenever you need them. It's just about you taking control and taking that time away for yourself. So having the breathing, having the time out. And next we want to think about is, as we've mentioned, is knowing our body. So our triggers could be situations, but our body has got an amazing way of telling us when we are struggling or when we are becoming overwhelmed with emotions. So get to know your body. Get to know, is it your shoulders that tense up? Is it your jaw that gets really, really tight? Is it your fists that get clenched? Knowing those triggers within our body can tell us when we're starting to increase with our emotional arousals, when our anger is starting to peak. And if we're able to jump in before it gets to the peak, we could be much more able to manage our anger. So it's about being aware of not only those triggering situations, but knowing our body and knowing what to do with our body when we are feeling that way. And what you can do with your body is the breath. So knowing if it's our shoulders, drop our shoulders back, and then doing some of the breathing exercises that we went through. Or if it's in our hands, just release our hands. I've got another video on DBT looking up willing hands and how that, just doing that, can change your mood, which is amazing. So being able to know our body. And then we want to work out what's going on up here. So when we become angry, we often think in extremes. So we say, oh, they're always going to be like this, or things never go my way. So those words of always and never sometimes creep in. And when we're doing that, being able to challenge those thoughts. So just because it's happened once doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Or just because it didn't happen for us once doesn't mean it's never going to happen. So looking at, okay, so what is the actual truth behind this thought? And being able to challenge those thoughts by asking ourselves, what's the evidence that it'll always happen? What's the evidence that it might not always happen? Or what's the evidence for it never happening, or the evidence against it never happening? So it's about looking at the evidence for and against our thought being true. So that's called cognitive restructuring in CBT. And then we have rumination. Often when we become angry about a situation or event or person, we ruminate a lot on it. So we think about it a lot. But I don't know if you ever noticed that when you ruminate, you kind of get stuck in those emotions. So your emotions, even though you may have calmed down, you'll start thinking about it, ruminating. Those emotions just fly back out again. So within that, it's about being able to stop and change your focus, your rumination. And how you do that is to completely immerse yourself in an activity. Whether that is following a recipe is an amazing one. Whether it's going out for a mindful walk. Whether it's listening to a song and dancing, moving a little bit, or even just watching TV or reading a book. But whatever it is, to combat rumination, you need to be using all of your attention on it. Because if you have some of your attention left, it's going to go back to that rumination. So they are the techniques which I find really helpful when I work with people to manage their anger, and I hope you find it a little bit helpful too. I've got loads of other videos if you'd like to check them out. But thank you for listening, and I hope you found it helpful.